This is my third time trying to do this video because of stuff happening. Alright, I was going to do this in several small videos, but I'm going to do it in one big video because I have to return it to the library. This book. Nietzsche. This is Nietzsche in a military uniform. That's all we're going to talk about Nietzsche. Moving on. I'm just kidding. Yeah, he believed in determinism, stuff like that. I don't think I have to say much about him because everybody knows about him. He's like super. If you don't know about him, you should just. I don't know. I don't know even. So moving on. Schopenhauer is very depressing and sad and pessimistic. That's Schopenhauer. And he also said that the whole world is just appearances backed up by will. And then there's Marx. Marx is a thing. I'm not going to say anything about him either because everybody already knows about Marx. There's a picture of him. So skipping him. Roger Scranton. Ah, cool. The guy named Roger Scranton wrote the Continental Philosophy section of this book. I just watched a documentary by him about how modern art is screwing up art and killing beauty and stuff like that. But yes. Hegel. Everybody else already knows about Hegel. But I'll talk about him because he's less well known than Nietzsche and Marx, who everybody knows. Yeah, Hegel believed that the individual didn't really exist. We were all in the collective. Like, this calculator doesn't really exist as an individual thing, but only as a universal concept representing calculators. Yep. He's also very religious. Marx made an atheist version of him and made it all economic and whatnot. And I didn't prepare beforehand because I've been too busy playing Vindictus, the video game. And I wanted, with the videos in this book, I wanted to test how well I can remember things. Which, now I'm going to prepare because apparently it's not very good. Yes, this is a good part of Hegel. I'll read this and then just move on because I'm running out of time and I have a lot to cover. This is how we come about knowledge in the Hegelian system. First moment, concept is presented to us but is abstract, immediate, indeterminate. In the class I took, it'd be like this. White patch here and now. Second moment, the abstract concept is mediated by rival conceptions, so as to become determinate, as to say something specific about its subject matter. It's a piece of paper, it's also a receipt, kind of, with the due date, which is the 19th, on it. It's universalized in that way. The conflict between the abstract and determinate conception is resolved by intellectual transcendence, Elfenbohm, to a truer, more complete conception that embodies both. That is, that the consciousness realizes itself, and that it has raised itself from abstract thinking to rationality. Yeah, so it becomes more concrete. The thing, but that's really a very oversimplified version of it, because that's more of his dialectic. That almost everything seems to be, you start with something, and then you have its opposite, and then you have a union of the two. Politics is said to be the same way with Marx and Hegel too. And then there's Schelling and Schiller, with the in between. They're like half Hegel, half Kant, pretty much. Then you have Fichte, who yeah, he's like Kant, pretty much. He's basically a Kant wannabe. That's what I think. That he wrote a book, and people thought that Kant had wrote the book. And that's how Fichte became very well known. And he also argued that there are two types of philosophies: idealism and dogmatism. And I don't think you like dogmatism. I mean, you don't call something dogmatism and act like you really like it. That's just a obvious thing. Next is Kant. The Kant version of this book is gigantic. Alright, so basically one thing Kant came up with, he said that the tabula rasa theory was completely dumb. He basically said that humans are born with certain abilities to think, like modality, time, being able to figure out this is heavier than this. That kind of stuff's built into our brains, and that's how we think. He also came up with this idea of synthetic versus analytic knowledge. One is like triangle, and the other type of knowledge is love. Because analytic would be like the concept triangle, synthetic would be like the concept of love. Yeah, it's basically Kant. He also came up with the noumenal world and the phenomenal world. Phenomenal world is what we can see. Nominal world is what we think. Sounds very Plato, but Kantians would say it's not Plato. It's just the same way that Hegel said some things that are very Platonic, and Platonists say no, it's not Platonic. It's just Plato-like. I'll just say that's to placate them. It's like Plato. It's very similar. Yep. Alright, after that you got Hume. Hume said that cause and effect doesn't exist. It's just relation of ideas. Because the only things that exist is instant moments. Like, this moment exists, this moment exists, but the in between those two moments doesn't exist. It's only our relation of ideas. We have an idea of this moment and this moment, but they're not related to each other. We just sort of rationally come up with an idea that there's something there, but the in-between doesn't exist. Which of course later on Kant countered by saying that we can only experience anything through time and space. When Hume said we can only know things through experience. So that would kind of have to say that Hume's trying to get rid of time in this relationship of cause and effect. Therefore, cause and effect do exist because of time, which is interesting. I know you're in a very deep conversation. If your opponent says, "Oh yeah, I counter that with time. Time is my answer and counter to your thing." All time, the very existence of time. So yeah, time pawns Hume. In the end, then they got Leibniz, which he said everything was made out of monads. Kind of like Adams, kind of not. And he's very similar to another guy named Spinoza. He came up with this whole thing about gods and everything. God's everywhere. Very pantheistic. Everything is God. Yep. Let's see, there's Locke. Pretty much normal empiricist stuff. Everything is... all knowledge comes from experience and whatnot. His political theories are pretty awesome about property and stuff, like how property is good, pretty much it, and how property increases how much wealth we all have. Like he said something like the Lockean proviso is that you have to leave as much and as good for everyone. And some people say you can't do that, but that's just not true. It's very easy to do. For instance, if you have 10 apple trees making apples, someone who's very simple-minded would say, well, the Lockean proviso can't happen, because if you take 8 of those apple trees, then that's 8 you're taking away from everyone else. You can't leave as much and as good for everyone. It's not true, because once you take them, you can end up producing way more apples than there had been when all the apple trees were in common. And then everyone ends up with more apples than they did before when everything was held in the commons. So, ponage. That's what I have to say to that. Let's see, the next up is, yes, it is Descartes. I think Wittgenstein's critique of Descartes was fantastic. I feel like I'm boring. You know, I should do something really random right now, like I don't know. Go to you and be like, this is a bunch of staples, and if you don't like these bunch of staples, I don't know. There you go. That's very interesting. Oh yes. Descartes said, I think therefore I am. But then Wittgenstein was all like, hey man, where did the I come from? And think come from? And the for come from? And the am come from? That's the problem with the Cogito, is he doesn't explain language. I mean, by the very act, he said that by the very act of doubting his existence, he proves his existence. He proves that there's a thinking thing out there. So you can say, I think therefore I am. But before he says, I think therefore I am, Descartes would also have to prove where language comes from, and he doesn't do that. And he doesn't prove how exactly can you say, I think therefore I am, when so far all you know in the Cogito is that you exist as a thinking being. But if all you know is that you individually exist as a thinking being, you can't say I think therefore I am yet, because you don't have language yet. You just know you exist. So yeah, that's why you really have to read Wittgenstein. If you're going into philosophy, you must do something with Wittgenstein. And if you don't, I don't know. That's all I'm saying. You really must. Oh yeah, Descartes was also. There's also a context. Descartes was that he was a Frenchman in Catholic France, fighting against those Protestants in Britain, and that may have influenced him very much in what his thinking was and how his thinking came about. Alright, out of the Descartes and Kant section, into the medieval philosophy section. Occam's razor, simplest answer is usually the right answer. That's just, that one's pretty easy. Everyone knows about that one. Yep, and then there's Bonaventure, but this book really just shows him as a Thomist. A Thomist. What is a Thomist? Good question. And if you're not Catholic or a philosophy major or into philosophy, you might not know what a Thomist even is. A Thomist, which I like to see. Yeah, there isn't a picture. A Thomist is a follower of Thomas Aquinas, a Catholic philosopher. Came up with his Aristotelian proofs for God, which they're all bad in my opinion, but that's what he did. Aquinas' proofs went something like this. There had to be a prime mover, a first cause of the universe, because everything is caused, therefore God came out of the other universe into this universe and caused this universe to happen. If you can think of a best thing, then God would be that best thing, therefore there's a God, stuff like that. The universe is so dang complex, there got to be a God to put it all together, and I know I'm forgetting one. But yeah, something like that. That is Aquinas, and is based on Aristotle. He helped Aristotle come into being here in Europe. He brought him back, made him very, very popular. And Anselm, I already talked about Anselm in a previous video. Then there's Boethius. I really don't know how to pronounce his name. It's spelled Boethius. Boethius. Yes, I read this like last month, so I don't really remember anything from Boethius. If that is his name, let me know if it really is. Yes. The problem with the universals, that's the problem. How universal concepts sort of, relate to the world that we are in right now. Yep, so going back. Good and evil. Oh yeah. Oh, I remember. It's all coming back to me now. But who was it? Augustine. Yes, Augustine. You can very tell the difference between the Aristotelian Aquinas and the Platonic Augustine with what I'm about to say. Augustine believed that the universe was split into three. You had God, ideas, and then the material universe. God was the most real thing there ever is and the most good. Ideas and souls and stuff are like kinda real, and they're pretty good. And the material world, material objects are evil and not as real as God or souls or ideas. And I just said ideas really weird, all southern-like. I don't know what the heck that's all about. But yeah, that's Augustine. That's it for the medieval philosophy section. On to the last section, and then we'll finally be done. If any of you are even left, which, if you are left after this, probably what isn't a very excruciating video, so say so in the comments, and I'll totally give you a shout out in the next video. Alright, medieval philosophy. Oh yes, Diogenes of Sinope, very interesting guy, was half naked all the time. He's like a Socrates on drugs. He masturbated in public once to make a point. Alexander the Great came up and he was all like, "Hey man, what are you doing? How's it going? Big fan of your work. You know, I'm Alexander the Great. You might have heard of my work, you know, in Macedonia and Greece." And Diogenes is like, STFU, GTFO, which if you don't know computer language, because you are either an old person or you live underneath a rock, that means shut the fuck up and get the fuck out. It's basically what Diogenes said to Alexander the Great, who apparently thought it was hilarious. Yeah, Diogenes was a crazy person. That is my this is my estimation, that he was just a crazy person. Oh yes, Saint Paul tried to convert people in Greece to Christianity with mixed results. Didn't really work so well. Worked kinda well. I know in one place it didn't work well. I forgot where though. Yeah, the Stoics, Epicureans, wandering sages. I know there was a lot of people, a lot of philosopher types in Greece who, they didn't like emotion, I noticed, a lot of them. They tried to put emotion, appetite, and reason, rationality into two different pots. And the Stoics went out and said that emotions and appetite is evil and wrong, get rid of it. And they wanted no emotion, pure reason, and stuff like that. Yeah, so existentialists, I don't think, would like living in ancient Greece so much. There were also a lot of philosophers back then who doubted everything. They doubted morality and laws and all that. Sophists said the laws really aren't all that important to begin with. Epicureans are cool. Epicurus is pretty awesome. I think the philosophic Satanism is like Epicureanism plus hedonism, plus maybe not, plus whatever the hell you want it to be. Basically, Epicureans said that your goal in life is happiness and friendship and stuff like that. And it's also a little very atheistic. So, you know, just sort of hang out and have fun. And you can have the most fun and the most happiness if you don't expect too much and you don't indulge too much. If you get used to eating cheese and crackers for lunch, eating pizza instead is going to seem a whole lot awesomer. So I'm very thirsty, and I'd like to get to the big three, but everyone knows about the big three already, so I don't want to waste your time talking about them. Plus, I am so thirsty right now that I feel that if I were to touch the back of my throat, my finger would get stuck because of the stickiness and dryness. Oh yes, one thing real fast about the Greeks. I figured out that we were all made of freaking atoms before modern scientists. It's pretty great. Oh no. Oh no. Oh no. Something bad has happened. That's all of it, man. That's all of it. Yes. This video was pretty crappy. I realize that. I can't think of how to have made it better. I don't know. Maybe I should